Hi readers, I'm Chris, and today I'm going to be talking about Shadow and Bone, the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and the new Netflix show that just came out this weekend. I am going to be doing a discussion on the book versus the TV show, and I am going to be talking about spoilers for the Shadow and Bone book. So if you have not read Shadow and Bone, pause this video, go read this book, and then come back and check it out. I'm not going to be giving away any other spoilers for any other books in this series or the Grishaverse, so you're safe on that front. Like most of my reviews and discussions, I'm going to be talking about three main things: world building, characters, and plot. If you're more interested in one of these topics than the others, I will be putting chapter times in the description box below. In the interest of time, I'm just going to jump in and start talking about world building. If you saw my review on Shadow and Bone, I guess I should have said that first. There was a non-spoiler review I did on it. I will link it above if you want to check it out. But one of the things that I said was that the world building was my favorite part of the Shadow and Bone book. I really loved all the Russian influences and things like that. And I think for the TV show that the showrunners and the cast and crew and everyone involved did a really good job on bringing that to life. Everything from the set locations to the costumes to all the little details, you could really feel those Russian influences through the screen. Particularly, I really liked the keftas that all the Grisha wear. So if for some reason you're not familiar, although I don't know why you'd be watching this video, but the Grisha, who are the people that do magic, or the small science as they call it in this world, every different type of Grisha wears a different color. So, for example, people that can summon, fire and air and water, they wear blue because they're summoners. I really loved all the details and all the different uniforms that they wore. And this is something that I'll mention later on, but they did give Alina a gold kefta in the final episode of the show, which I went back and checked, and I could not find anywhere where she had a gold kefta. I believe in the book she wears a black one at the end to match the Darkling. I'll talk more about that later, but I thought that it was absolutely beautiful. My only, small complaint is that everything in this world seems so dark. Like, even when they're out in the daylight, everything is cloudy, so everything kind of has this dark and dirty tone to it. And I get that that's a choice, but I do think they still could have gotten that whole, northern Russian ambiance without everything being so dark. Some of these, Alina's power, she's literally the sun summoner. She can summon light, so there should have been some brightness, lightness around there somewhere. And not that there aren't things that are colorful, but it just has that type of sheen to it. But anyway, again, that's a choice. That's a choice that they made. I don't hate it. I just would have liked to seen some brightness at some point. Another thing that I really liked in the book were the magical creatures, specifically the stag. And again, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the plot, but I loved the design of the stag in the TV show. I thought they did a really good job bringing this beautiful stag to life. They got all his big antlers and everything, and I thought that was absolutely beautifully done. And I liked that we actually got to see the stag a few different times. Alina has some visions of him earlier on in the show, and then when she finally, meets him in person, etc., etc. So I really liked that type of stuff. There were some world building choices that were actually new to the show that were not in the book. And full disclosure, this is the only book that I've read in the Grishaverse. So I don't know if some of this stuff is explored later on in the series or a different series. But in the show, they made a very conscious choice for there to be a big divide between East Ravka and West Ravka. Now, in the book, we know that East and West Ravka are separated by the Fold, or the Unsea. and that because West Ravka lies on the sea, on the ocean, they have access to a lot of supplies and stuff that East Ravka does not. Now, in the book, that's pretty much as far as that goes. There's not any real discussion of, like, the different people that live on either side, etc., etc. But in the show, they go into this very, very deeply. So much so that the people that live in West Ravka actually want to secede from the other side. Like, they want to be independent. They want to be their own country. They don't want to have to send their supplies back east to them. They want to be on their own. So I thought that was an interesting choice. And if someone has read the rest of the series or other books in the Grishaverse, let me know down below if this is a thing that happens later on. The reason that this becomes important is because of what happens at the end of the story / TV show. I will talk a little bit more about that in the plot section. But basically, they go into depth about West Ravka, the people that live there, and how the people that live there are very... They don't want anything to do with the Darkling, they don't want anything to do with the Grisha, and they don't want anything to do with Alina, the Sun Summoner. Most people, at least in the book, like, worship her. She's supposed to be someone that's going to save them. But to the people that live in West Ravka, they don't want her to save them. They want to stay separate from the people in the East. So, yeah, again, I don't know if that was necessarily needed. I don't know that that was needed to add anything to the story. The only thing that it does add is because of what happens at the end. And again, I will get that more when we get into the plot section. And the only other thing that I did want to mention really quick was the fold itself. I absolutely loved the design of the fold in the TV show, and it was just like I had pictured it in my head. This big wall of dark shadows, and once you get inside, everything is very eerily quiet, like nothing's moving, but then you have these horrible creatures that come and attack you. I loved all that. I thought that was beautiful and brilliant and really well done. So next, I'm going to move on to talk about the characters of Shadow and Bone. Now, as an 8-hour TV show, there are a lot of characters, a lot. So I'm only going to be talking about the main ones, and I guess I will talk about them kind of in my order of favorites. So I'm going to start with our 3 main characters, Alina, Mal, and the Darkling. My favorite being, of course, the Darkling. I love the Darkling. He was probably my favorite character in the book, and that did not really change watching the show. Although, I don't know, the crows, I'll talk about that in a minute, but okay, the Darkling. I'm a sucker for a good villain, and I think that the Darkling is a great villain. So something that the show did that the book, I guess, did not have time to, is they really leaned hard into his past. We actually got to see some scenes of his past, which the book never either didn't do or didn't have time to do. So I really loved seeing that. You know, he talks a lot about how, what he's doing by trying to expand the fold and use all this dark power is to help his fellow Grisha. And in the book, we can feel that that's what he feels, but we don't really see it as he sees it. But the show, on the other hand, does a great job of showing that Grisha used to be hunted down and killed, and that's why it's so important to him to show his power to everyone so that he never has to kneel to anyone or never has to be a slave to anyone ever again. So I think the show did a really good job of showing that. Now, one thing I do want to mention is I thought it strange that I think maybe once or twice they said the name Darkling, but other than that, no one actually refers to him as Darkling. They refer to him as General Kerrigan. Again, I don't know if that is something from later books or elsewhere in the Grishaverse, but that name is never mentioned in the Shadow and Bone book, so I don't quite know where they pulled that one from. Again, if anyone knows, leave it in the comment section down below. If it's not a big spoiler or anything, I don't know why it would be. So I don't know why the show chose not to call him Darkling. Like I said, a couple people do once or twice. I know Mal calls him Darkling, you know, at the end when they have their big fight. Someone calls him Darkling in a flashback, but for the most part, everyone just calls him General. And I guess that is to show that he's like the leader of the Grisha, because, you know, General as a title is something that we associate with a leader. But other than that, I was really perplexed as to why they made that choice. So I'd love to hear someone else's thoughts on that. But yeah, I thought that the actor Ben Barnes did a great job of portraying Darkling / General Kerrigan. In the first half of the show, you know, just like in the first half of the book, you really see why Alina would fall in love with this guy. Like, he's very dark, he's mysterious, he saves her, he's like doing everything he can to try and get on her good side. And seeing that play out in the show was really, really fun. I was like, oh, Darkling, yes, yes, absolutely. If Alina doesn't want to be with you, then I'm your girl. And then in the second half of the show, when you kind of find out who he really is, and everything takes that dark, sinister turn, I think the actor did a really good job of portraying that as well. So that is why the Darkling is my favorite. Next, I will move on to Alina, our main character. Now, in my review, Alina was probably my least favorite thing about the book, only because she was such a generic character. We didn't know much about her other than she's an orphan, she has this power. Like, that was it. She was very basic, very surface level. She has this power. Like, that was it. She was very basic, very surface level. Within the first 60 seconds of the Netflix show, I learned more about Alina than I ever did reading the book. We meet Alina first thing in the show. She starts talking about herself, and she talks about where she is from, which is something that has not been revealed in the book. I assume that it is something that is revealed at a later time, but they chose to reveal it right away in the show, which I thought was an interesting choice. And actually, I thought it was a good choice, a good change, because it helped give her a little bit of a backstory. And everywhere she went, people recognized her as being from a different country. And I think that is something that would have helped in the book make her character not so generic. So I think that was a good change that they added to the show that I wish had been in the book. As far as the actress goes, I think she did a really great job of portraying the two different Alinas. The one in the beginning, who's very innocent and very sweet and very, you know, she's easily manipulated by Darkling. And then the second Alina, who finally kind of comes into her own power and accepts her role as the Sun Summoner and, you know, helps do what she was born to do. I think she did a really good job on that. So I really, really liked the changes that they made to her character and helping flesh her out a little bit more and make her more interesting. So that brings me to Mal, who, again, not my favorite character in the book. I just thought in the beginning he kind of came off like a big dumb oaf, and then when he shows up to try and save Alina the first time and they get in their fight, what he says is basically like that he didn't want her, or wasn't, you know, romantically wanted her until he saw her with someone else, which was just like, oh God, like so over that. No. Then by the end of the book, I did come around on him a little bit, especially when he told Alina that he loved her, that he loved all of her, even the part of her that loved the Darkling. That won me over a little bit. Now, Mal in the show, I thought his character was probably the biggest change from the book, because the Mal in the show, first of all, and this is nothing against the actor, but it was not how I pictured him in my head. I kind of pictured him as like this like big, burly, kind of guy's guy. He's a flirt. He's all this stuff. And that's not what the actor portraying him in the show really, that's not the vibe that he had. And again, I don't think that's necessarily the actor's fault. That's just the way that it was cast and what they went with. So in the show, it very much is implied that Mal doesn't see Alina for who she is, on the inside, and that he doesn't appreciate her until later on in the book. And they did do that a little bit in the show, but to me, it also felt like they made it seem that Mal loved Alina pretty much since the beginning. I mean, in the first scene that we meet Mal and Alina in the show, his friends, Mal's friends, are kind of teasing him, like, ooh, there's the girl that you've been talking about. And it's like, that's not really the vibe that the book gave off. There's also a lot of scenes where, like, everything Mal does and every step he takes is, like, trying to get to Alina, trying to help Alina, trying to do everything for Alina. And, yeah. I guess because the book, we don't really see Mal's perspective, we don't have time to explore that, but he very much came off as being more romantically interested in Alina than he appeared in the book. Or at least that was my impression of it. I'd be curious to know what other people thought. So, those are our three main characters, and of course, I can't talk about the show without mentioning the crows. So, if you're a fan of the Grishaverse, you know who the crows are. They do not appear in Shadow and Bone, but they appear in other books within the Grishaverse. So we've got Kaz, Inej, and Jasper. I'm not going to talk about them a lot because they are not in the book. But I will say that, yes, other than Darkling, I absolutely love these three. They were totally awesome. I love the characters. I love the actors. Excellent. I cannot wait to see more of them, hopefully in season 2. And I definitely want to go and read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom so that I can get to know them more. Because they just seem fantastic and I love them. There were some other new characters added to the show. Mostly I'm thinking of Nina and Matthias. Now, honestly, I loved their characters in the show, and I loved their story, and I loved their little side plot. But if I'm being honest, I don't really see how they related to Alina's story at all. Clearly, there's something there that they're setting up for season 2, and that's fine. But, see, this is hard because I really love them, especially Matthias. I love Matthias. But they had nothing to do with Alina and the Darkling and that whole situation. So I don't know really why they were there, except just for filler and, like I said, to set up for season 2. So I'm not going to say anything else about them. Now, there's a lot of other great characters. Some of my favorites include Genya, loved her in the book and in the show. Bagra, again, loved her in the book, loved her in the show. Zoya, didn't like her in the book, liked her more in the show. Definitely liked Zoya a lot more in the TV show. And then we have the Apparat, who you're not really supposed to like. So, don't really like him in the book, don't really like him in the show. Be curious to see what they do with his character moving forward. And, yeah, okay. So I think I've spent enough time talking about all our main characters, so now I'm going to move on to the last section, the plot. Now, like I said in my non-spoiler review, this is a very simple plot. Orphan girl finds powers, has to learn how to use those powers, and then decide if she wants to let the evil guy use her, or if she wants to make her own path. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's enough material in here for maybe an 1.5 to 2 hour movie. So the fact that they were able to turn this into 8 hours of TV episodes was quite impressive. But, like I said, that's because they added so many different storylines. Not only did we have Alina's storyline, which is what's in the book, we have the Crow's storyline, we have a storyline for Mal that was added, we had Nina and Matthias and their storyline added. There's a lot of things that were added. So again, I'm just going to talk about the stuff that was in the Shadow and Bone book. And for the most part, everything that happens in the book is what happened in the TV show, with a couple like minor changes. So the biggest change, I think, is the change actually to Morozova's stag. Now, in the book, Alina learns about the stag from Darkling. They have a conversation about it, and he says, you know, it's this mythical, magical creature, and whoever kills it gets its powers. Although Alina does say that she heard in her fairy tale that if you spare its life, it will grant you a wish. But anyway, so the whole plot becomes, Alina knows that Darkling wants to find the stag to create an amplifier for Alina. Now, in the show, it's kind of the same, but also a little bit different. Let me explain. So, in the show, Alina learns about Morozova's stag from the Apparat. And actually, she learns that the stag is not the only magical creature in existence, and that there are a bunch of magical creatures, and that they were created, these magical creatures, by the first Grisha. So already, there's like a lot of backstory and lore that is not in the book. And again, I don't know if that's stuff that comes up later on. If not, it should be, because I think all that is really cool, and really cool lore and world building type information. So when Alina decides to go after the stag in the show, it's because she wants to keep the stag from Darkling, which is the same thing that happens in the book. But in the book, she knows that the stag is meant for her. In the show, she doesn't know that the stag is meant for her, but she's going after him anyway, if that makes sense. So it's just like a very small change. I don't know why. I don't see what making that change adds to the story exactly, but I don't know. Because what happens when they go after the stag in the book is that Alina asks Mal to kill her, because she knows that this stag is meant for her and that the Darkling will use her to complete his mission, and she doesn't want that to happen. She asks Mal to kill her. Like, if he gets the stag, last case resort, you need to kill me so that he cannot use me. Alina in the show and Mal in the show, that never happens. They never have that conversation. She never asks Mal to kill her. So when they have that show-off in the Glen with the stag, Mal never has to make that choice. In the book, obviously, he chooses not to kill her, and that's how she gets captured. In the show, that never happens. They just kind of give up, and she gets captured. Well, not give up, but Alina can't protect everyone. They capture Mal, and she has to stop and let the Darkling kill the stag. It's not until afterwards that she realizes that he's going to put these stag's antlers around her neck. Now again, I don't know why they made that change, and I think it's like a small thing, but I actually like the context of that in the book better, because I feel like it does a little bit for Mal's character. He has to make this choice whether to kill Alina, and he chooses not to kill her. The fact that Alina was willing to end her life to stop the Darkling from his quest also says a lot for her character. So I don't know why they changed that in the show. I'm not exactly sure. Because once Alina gets the antlers, and I do have to mention, the fact that in the show they kind of melt into her skin was really freaking cool. I loved the way the antlers looked just as a necklace. That would have been cool too. But like watching it mold and melt into her skin, and then she's got these crazy spikes, that was totally cool. So then we get to the end, and they're in the fold, and everything's getting ready to come to a big conclusion. one thing that really bothered me, that annoyed me, is that, so in episode 8, the last episode, they're on the skiff, going through the fold, going towards West Ravka, and Alina is acting like she has no idea what the Darkling is going to do, which I find really odd because the whole reason that she ran from him back in episode 5 is because Baghra told her he's going to expand the fold. He's going to expand it, all this stuff. So I don't know why in episode 8 she acts like she doesn't know what he's doing or she's surprised by what he's trying to do. That was a little strange, because Book Alina absolutely knows what's happening. She knows what's happening, what he's going to do. She knows that it's her helping him when he destroys that town in West Ravka. She knows it was her that did it. In the show, they make it seem more like it was only the Darkling, if that makes sense. Not Darkling and Alina. Again, I don't know why they made that change, but like I mentioned back when we were talking about the world building, they made it seem like the people of this town in West Ravka were trying to kill Darkling, trying to kill Alina, trying to kill Grisha. So I guess maybe they did that so it wouldn't be so much of a shock when that town gets destroyed. Like, hey, if we didn't kill them, they would have killed us. But none of that context is in the book. In the book, that town gets destroyed by them just because. Like, there's no reason for it. And honestly, I almost feel like the no reason for it version is better because it makes it that much more shocking. That much more like these people were 100% totally innocent and you killed them anyway. So I feel like the book version of that is a little bit better than the show version. Alright everyone, now we've come to my end on my discussion. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, I hope everyone has a good day. And if you haven't read Shadow and Bone or watched the show, go do it. You won't be disappointed. Bye everyone.